Wow. Wow. Wow, that was incredible. I'm going to start my timer here so I don't run over and bore everybody. But man, 10 o'clock on a Saturday, got it, 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and Libertarians showed up. Who would have thought, right? I'm impressed. The fact that you guys are here and that I'm here, I know that I'm amongst my people, so thank you so much for being here. Hey, I'm a little sheepish because I actually prepared 25 minutes of material and realized last night when I couldn't sleep that I could just stand up here literally and say, end the Fed, legalize raw milk, and walk off the stage as a hero. And, but I'm gonna go ahead and give you all of my material, all 25 minutes of it. And speaking of heroes though, up here on the screen, that's my hero, Dr. Ron Paul. And if you're interested in winning that bust, if you'll scan that code and you can enter, there's only a few hundred people here, guys, your chances of winning are pretty high. But we'll give that away before the end of the day. I want to give you a little bit of background about myself. I'm a 13-year veteran of the military. I served in the Marine Corps, the Army, and the Idaho Army National Guard. And immediately after 9/11, I actually enlisted in the National Guard to go fight in Afghanistan because I wanted to get America's pound of flesh. I wanted to avenge the attacks on New York City and the Pentagon in Pennsylvania. I volunteered to fight. I deployed to the northeastern mountains of Afghanistan, the Pesh River Valley. And if anybody has seen the documentary Korengal, that's where I was at, deep in the Hindu Kush Mountains. And I was part of an Apache helicopter battalion, and we were attached, National Guardsmen, attached to the 82nd Airborne Division and the 10th Mountain Division, two storied active Army units. But 2005, it was still pretty novel for the National Guard to be attached in a forward combat zone as an expeditionary force. The active duty military, they didn't trust us. We were part-time weekend warrior soldiers. We had jobs, and the military was seen as an annoyance for us. They didn't trust us. They didn't want us there. But we fought hard, and we demonstrated that we were their equal on the battlefield. Because you see, every time the National Guard puts their uniform on, it's for one purpose: to train to defend America. Every single time we put the uniform on. We don't deal with all the training that the active duty military does, the woke DEI classes, the sensitivity training. When I left my job on Friday and showed up at the armory, it was to train to defend America. So we were qualified, we were prepared, but they still didn't want us. And I had a team of 12 National Guardsmen, German Catholics from Wisconsin that I was in charge of. And we built remote outposts deep in enemy territory so that the Apache helicopters could come in, land, get a quick turn, and get back out into the fight. And they wouldn't have to fly all the way back to Kabul or Jalalabad. And we were isolated, far away from the Army supply system. And that's where my story kind of starts. After about a month in these rugged conditions, my guys had no replacement supplies. We had no gloves, goggles, our uniforms were threadbare, our boots were worn out, our body armor was destroyed. And we couldn't get anybody to help us. 10th Mountain wouldn't help us, 82nd Airborne wouldn't help us, and my incredibly incompetent chain of command of the National Guard wouldn't help. But I'm pretty damn stubborn, if anybody knows me. I don't take no for an answer. And so I called home on a satellite phone to talk to a friend of mine. He was also my mentor in life, kind of an older brother, father figure. His name was Gary. And Gary reminded me, he goes, Dan, the answer's in the Constitution. And I was like, shut up, Gary. I'm talking about real world, life and death, combat problems. And he goes, Dan, the National Guard doesn't belong to the Pentagon. That doesn't belong to the Department of Defense. It doesn't belong to the active duty Army. It doesn't belong to the President of the United States. The National Guard belongs to the states and to the people, and your governor is your commander-in-chief. The answer, Dan, is in the Constitution. I'm like, damn it, Gary. I didn't need the lecture. What do you want me to do about it? And he gave me the governor of Idaho's cell phone number. What do you think I did with that cell phone number? I climbed to the top of a mountain in that Pesh River Valley and got a real clear signal on the satellite phone, and I called Governor Jim Risch, and guess what? He answered. He had just been appointed governor from the lieutenant governor's position, and he listened to my problems. He promised to help. He understood that he was the commander-in-chief of the National Guard, and I was satisfied. I did my part. Well, 48 hours later, my battalion commander arrives on the scene pissed off. He storms in and he goes, I don't know what you did, I don't know who you called, but there's 2 shipping containers coming from Idaho full of supplies that you guys need to maintain the mission. Now give me your damn satellite phone. He was more worried about his career being ended for having one of his soldiers go around the chain of command and shining a spotlight on his inadequacies. That wasn't my intention. My intention was to take care of my men. So I held Jim Risch up as a hero. He understood the Constitution. He understood the men who were putting their lives on the line. Well, I came home. I was injured in 2007. I came home from Afghanistan, and I was released from service. And I spiraled out of control. I got real heavy. I got to be about 310 pounds. I grew a beard that was almost down to my waist. I lost my family, my wife, my house, my business. And I was pissed. 2015, I met my wife. And I started to try to get back into society again. And then I saw this orange man come down a gold escalator. It was really weird. I was having a hard time reconciling it. And then there was this quiet, soft-spoken congresswoman from Hawaii, both running for president on one different of the major parties. But they were all speaking forbidden truths. America's endless wars were stupid and they had to end. Hope stirred up. I started feeling something inside, a little tingly. Well, a couple years later, I was watching the progress, and my governor, Jim Risch, all of a sudden became the chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, the same Jim Risch that had helped me before. And at the same time, my best friend from the National Guard went back for his 7th combat tour. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to call Jim Risch, see what I can do. That's a very powerful man right now. But I didn't have his number, so I did the only thing a Marine knows how to do. I got out my box of crayons. You're welcome for all the Navy guys in the room. And I wrote an op-ed to my local newspaper, asking Jim Risch to use his authority to bring the troops home, or at least outline the conditions that we could come home. And 9 newspapers in my state picked it up, and they ran it back to back for 2 weeks. I was like, God, this stuff's easy. Politics is easy. I saw Jim Risch at an event a couple weeks later, and he said, Dan, I remember you. I remember that situation. I read your op-ed. We're done nation building. We are done sending American troops and treasure into countries that just don't want us there. And I thought, man, God, I'm 2 for 2. This stuff is so easy. But old Jim Risch, I believed him. He's about this tall. He's not a very big guy. He got on his plane, he went back to Washington, D.C., and 3 times in the next 90 days, he voted to extend the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Yemen indefinitely. I'm stubborn. I was betrayed, so I called 100 of my buddies I deployed with or served with all over the country, and I started this organization called Bring Our Troops Home. And I said, we're taking Capitol Hill. Let's go. Insurrection, baby. For the NSA, that's figuratively. We went to Capitol Hill. We raised a little bit of money, and we had every one of those members of the military, those veterans, meet with their members of Congress and the Senate and ask them to please advocate for peace and never send us back into a war unless you've done your job first. And they all shook our hands. They all took photos. They all pointed to their yellow ribbon on the door. They thanked us for their service, and they lied. Except for one. One told the truth. She told us that as long as she's in Congress, we will never come home from Afghanistan. What? Oh, no, that's right. Right slide. And that's when I realized that the swamp is not favorable ground and that we have to go somewhere else to fight. I can't fight from the mud and the swamp gas of D.C. I'd rather fight from the fertile ground of Boise, Idaho, or Helena, Montana, or Concord, New Hampshire. So we decided to go to the states. We discovered this thing called the Defend the Guard Act. And it's legislation that was crafted by the incredible people at the 10th Amendment Center. You guys know the 10th Amendment Center? Yeah, they're great. And veterans helped them craft it, who understood and lived by the betrayal of their government. And we decided we're going to take that bill, we're going to polish it up, and we're going to take it all across the country. It had been floundering. It had started in Maine. What year was that, Eric? 2008? 2011. And Aaron Libby. And Delegate Pat McGee, another veteran, had started at West Virginia, had gained no traction. But we decided we're going to take it and we're going to storm America. And while we fought for the Defend the Guard, we started a second battle that we had to finish. We went to Wyoming and we worked with the Republican Party, and we helped censure Liz Cheney in every single county in Wyoming. We stripped her of institutional support and funds to get her reelected, and we beat her in the primary by 37 points. Folks, that's what happens when you awaken the remnant. So, what is Defend the Guard? I think before that, we need to talk about What is the National Guard? The National Guard is supposed to do three things according to the Constitution: repel an invasion, suppress an insurrection, and enforce the laws of the Union. You know what's missing from that list right there? What is that? Wars overseas. Fighting wars of choice halfway around the globe. I choose my words very carefully. Wars of choice. It's not on that list. But since 9/11, the Guard has been turned into an expeditionary combat force. Is it on a timer or? Okay. No, it's working. Yeah, okay. Now my joke. God. No, I'm just kidding. The Guard has been turned into an expeditionary combat force, abused without constitutional authority, and we've let it happen, folks, on our watch. It's our responsibility. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to pass it on to our children. This is our problem to fix. You guys, the Defend the Guard Act is simple. It's a piece of 10th Amendment-based, state-based legislation. It says that, here's the whole bill. Unless Congress declares war, the National Guard from New Hampshire will not be released into federal service for foreign combat. That's it. That's the bill. And of course, you get lawyers and politicians involved. You have to put these and thous and shalls and stuff in it. But that's the bill. But it shakes me to my core that we even have to do this, because it's already in the Constitution. It already exists. So, it exists. But guess what? Congress hasn't done since 1942. They have not declared war, not in Korea, not in Vietnam, not in Grenada, not in Panama, not in Desert Storm, not in Bosnia and the Balkans, not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq 1, 2, or 3, not in Libya, not in Lebanon, not in Syria, and not in Yemen. They've abdicated their responsibility. The Constitution demands a declaration of war before we change the condition of our nation from one of peace to one of war. It demands it. And we now demand that they obey the Constitution. After 9/11, Bush and Cheney and Bolton and Rumsfeld, they launched America into endless empire building, wars all over the world. That's my hell right there. If I end up in that place, this is what I'll look at every day. As a lifelong libertarian undercover in the Republican Party, those aren't my guys. So why did they do this? Why did they call in the National Guard? You see, the active duty military was stretched thin. During the height of the global war on terror, the National Guard troops were called in to augment the active military. And they end up making up 50% of all of the boots on the ground in the global war on terror. 50% came from the National Guard. Fast forward to Syria. In 2014, President Obama did something I respect. He went to Congress and said, I want to go to war in Syria. I need you to authorize it and give me a declaration. And Congress told him to pound his feet and get out. We're not doing that. They were war weary from Iraq. And then I lost all respect for him when he went anyway. And in 2024, after years of mission creep, we were still there. At the beginning of that war in Syria, 3% of the American troops were from the National Guard. When it ended, and it hasn't ended yet, but when the al-Assad regime fell in December, 58% of the troops in Syria were from the National Guard. Okay, thank you. Guard soldiers fought, bled, and died to guard Syrian oil fields in a war that Congress never declared. And meanwhile, in this triangle of enemies in Syria, military National Guards on one side, the CIA and our intelligence apparatus was funding another side of that triangle, and then our NGOs and our allies were funding and equipping the third side of the triangle, and American soldiers were shooting at American dollars, and American dollars were shooting at American soldiers, and it's the National Guard that's there lifting the burden. The National Guard's been abused. The Constitution's been betrayed. Defend the Guard is surging all across America, folks. It's not just an idea anymore. It's not just a policy paper. Today, Defend the Guard legislation is actively moving in over 30 states. 30. We've been doing this for 6 years. And we aren't just introducing bills. We're not just virtue signaling. We're winning votes. New Hampshire became the first state to pass Defend the Guard through a deliberative legislative body, passing it in the House of Representatives. It was amazing. And I want to congratulate anybody here that participated in that. When one domino falls, the rest start to fall. Shortly after that, Arizona Senate passed it, then the Idaho Senate passed it. And then Arizona came back and passed it again. And next week, it'll be on the floor of the House of Representatives in Arizona where we have the votes. By next Friday, we could have this bill on Governor Katie Hobbs' desk. Then, a shock of all shocks, the Virginia House of Delegates passes it 99-0. We've scored major committee victories in Texas, Wyoming, Montana, Georgia, and Maine, and some of the most inspiring Defend the Guard testimony comes from the Free State Project's own Eric Brakey when he was a senator in Maine, fighting valiantly for Defend the Guard. You should look up his speeches if you haven't seen them. Folks, they're for the history books. They're fantastic. Defend the Guard is no longer theoretical. It's real and it's happening, and the empire knows it. And what do empires do when the rebellion rises? The empire strikes back. Thank you. I slowed it down as much as I could, yeah. And the war machine isn't taking this lying down, folks. They are fighting back hard with every dirty trick that they can muster. They send generals in with stars on their collar and ribbons on their chest into state legislatures, not to offer advice and counsel, which is their role, but to threaten and intimidate state legislators. They lie to them about losing federal funding, a fear tactic that has no real legal foundation. They swamp state houses with defense industry lobbyists, protecting profits, not patriots. And then they whine and they dine your elected officials. In state after state, the National Guard leadership has been taking committee members up on helicopter rides, showing off the might and power of the military and making them feel like kings for a day, all the while lobbying against the bill, trying to kill Defend the Guard legislation. It's not about national security. It's about preserving their unchecked power and their endless supply of money. Upper brass opposes Defend the Guard. Lower officers and almost all enlisted support it. Why? Because they're the ones that pay the price. In West Virginia, a general from the National Guard Bureau personally called the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House has a National Guard training base in his district and employs about 300 of his constituents. And he said, if you let Defend the Guard even have a hearing, I will close that base by tomorrow morning. Folks, that's not persuasion. There's a name for that. Any attorneys in the room? That's extortion. That's extortion. And it doesn't stop there. In Idaho, during a meeting with myself, Lieutenant Governor, and senior members of the governor's staff, the Idaho Adjutant General openly admitted that Defend the Guard is 100% accurate and in alignment with the Constitution. But he said he opposes it anyway because, in his own words, and I quote, the president needs to be able to go to war whenever he wants. What an astonishing misunderstanding and total betrayal of the Constitution that he swore an oath to protect. The enumerated powers in the Constitution are clear and they are limited and they are well defined. The president doesn't get to decide when we go to war. Say it with me. The president does not get to decide when we go to war. Congress does. And Congress must declare it. And if they won't, then the states must stand up and say no. What do we got here? Oh, look at that. That guy's a handsome gentleman. Folks, the states have to interpose. That's the way our federal system of government works. It shall be the duty of the states to interpose between their own militia and the arbitrary power of an overreaching federal government. He said this while debating against a federal draft of the militia in the War of 1812. Folks, the war machine's panic proves one thing: Defend the Guard is working. When states say no, the empire loses its supply of fresh bodies, and that is our greatest leverage. So before I go any further, I want to talk about something that everyone in this room, I'm sure if you're all as well read as most libertarians are, you understand: the Remnant. Let's see here. Perfect. Many of you know the reference. It comes from the Mises Institute, and before that, it was Albert J. Nock's essay, Isaiah's Job. I'm sure we've all seen or heard it in some form or fashion. The Remnant is a small group of men and women who still believe in truth and liberty and justice, even when the world has lost its damn mind. Friends, we've found the Remnant. It's veterans who have said no more. It's activists born from the Ron Paul Revolution. It's constitutional Republicans. It's principled libertarians. And it's anti-war Democrat... Wait, hold on. Wrong slide. Anti-war Democrats... Advance one. Oh, there we go. Oh, wait. God dang it. Anti-war Democrats. There we go. Forget it. There are no anti-war Democrats today. Where have they gone? We're just going to stick with this right here. We'll start there. Veterans who have said no more, activists born from the Ron Paul Revolution, constitutional Republicans, and principled libertarians. We are finding each other and we are joining forces. And folks, you don't hear this enough. We're winning. Today, some of the remnant sit in key positions of power and have publicly endorsed Defend the Guard. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, NSA Director Tulsi Gabbard, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., former presidential candidate and now governor of Ohio candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, Senator Rand Paul. Those are my people. Those are my people. And folks, there are thousands of activists around the country. The remnant and our activist army are flipping legislative votes in real time. And they're doing it by making 10 to 15 phone calls during their lunch break, and they're flipping hard no votes on legislative committees to yes. And we see it happen every week. Because when the remnant moves, the empire trembles. And I can think of no greater example of the remnant than what I see in this room right here, the free staters in this room. You are the remnant. You guys have gathered from around the world to build a community of liberty right here in New Hampshire. You are the remnant, and we need to hear this every once in a while, folks. We are winning. One of the best libertarians and members of the remnant that I know, my friend Scott Horton. He was testifying before a hearing in Montana or Wyoming or Dakota. I can't remember. They're running together now. And in the room across from him, he was testifying remotely, were all these military generals with their ribbons and their stars. And Scott looked right at him. And he said, you know, the Secretary of Defense supports Defend the Guard. You generals may want to check in with the boss because I think you're being insubordinate. Scott Horton has a way, right? Folks, that's the remnant. Bold, fearless, unapologetic. So some victories that we've already had, guys, through the relentless work of the remnant, the activists who have refused to quit. We've begun to disrupt the old neocon stronghold over the Republican Party. In 6 states, including right here in New Hampshire, we've succeeded in getting Defend the Guard enshrined in the official Republican Party platform. Folks, think about this for a second. That is not the party of John McCain. That is not the party of Mitt Romney. That is not the party of George W. Bush. That's the vision of Ron Paul finally taking root. I like to think of it this way. The rise of this movement didn't start yesterday. Back in 2008, when Ron Paul ran for president and received more support from active duty military and veterans than any other candidate, he didn't win the nomination, but he planted the seeds. That generation that rallied for Ron Paul, us revolutionists, we've spent 17 years maturing in the political system. What are we doing? 2 minutes? Okay, all right. Got it, okay. They ran for office, they gained seniority, they built relationships, they trained the next generation of warriors, and now we are seeing those fruits of that long labor. The revolution is growing up and it's multiplying, folks. Real last slide, and then we'll go to the panel. All right, in Texas, we got Defend the Guard on the ballot, on the Republican primary ballot this year, the same ballot that Donald Trump was on. It's received 83% of the support in past overwhelmingly. It beat Donald Trump by 60,000 votes. Look at the number of no votes for Defend the Guard compared to Nikki Haley, the warmonger's votes that she received on Election Day. Pretty similar, right? We're also passing Defend the Guard resolutions in American Legion halls and VFW. And folks, that's how you build the remnant. That's how you take on the war machine. It's with the grassroots, it's with passion, it's with tact, and it's with strategy. I've got more, but I'm going to leave it there, folks. I'm honored to be here. Eric, thank you so much for inviting me. I hope you'll stick around. We're going to have a great panel with some incredible Defend the Guard activists and champions. Thank you very much.